And that is it. That marks the end of that excerpt that we received from Apple earlier this week. So we're going to move on into the live discussion section. I didn't take any notes. This is my first time just sitting down and reading it straight through without having my attention divided between looking at my phone and trying to copy the text onto my computer. And so we're just going to go through it, moving around the text from place to place without any chronological order. And we're going to do this live. So as I was reaching the end in this about the author section, I guess what stood out to me here was that Carol is a prolific writer. She's very famous. People love her work. We learned that in episode 1, but here we also get some extra information that she has received awards, namely the Mars and Eros Reader's Choice Award. Now, I did a search here just for Mars and Eros. For those of us who don't know, Mars is a depiction of a shield and spear. It's also the symbol for male that you can see over here on the right. So it's a planet as well. It's a planet, but it's also symbolically the symbol for maleness, iron, and things of that sort. Eros is the more interesting word that was used here for the award. Eros is the Greek god of love and sex, also known as Cupid. Now, his role in myths is often complementary. He often appears in the presence of Aphrodite and the other love gods and often acts as a catalyst for people to fall in love. But he has little unique mythology of his own. Earlier, I took a look at the Pluribus Reddit channel and I made a video on one of the more popular early theories after episode 2 was released, which was that the hive mind loves Carol, as in it legitimately loves her more than the other, immune survivors, I guess you would call them. And the reason this person created that theory was because of Helen. Helen transmitted her memories and her consciousness to the hive mind at the point of death as she was looking at Carol and experiencing positive emotions and all of this stuff. So people on that subreddit theorize that that could have done something that gave the hive mind a particular deference or love, if we can even call it that, for Carol, which might explain why Zosha in episode 2 seemed to require Carol's permission to go with that one guy who came on the Air Force One airplane. It seemed like Zosha had a sort of unique emotional attachment to Carol that she did not have toward the other survivors. And that's a little bit strange because this is supposed to be a hive mind. You would expect that each member of the Pluribus hive mind would have the same emotions to everyone. Since they're all a hive mind, it's not really possible for them to have individual specific attachments to people that are not present in other members of the hive mind. But in that second episode, it seemed like Zosha just had a deference or a love for Carol that wasn't present for that Diabate, that Kumba guy. And just going off pure vibes from the first 2 episodes, I do believe that this story will have some romantic aspect between Carol and Zosha that serves as a point of some serious conflict within the show. Another thing to go along with that theory is that it says Sturka's work has been translated into more than 24 languages and has earned her devoted fans across the globe. That's interesting because the other members of the hive mind, forgive me for saying this, but they're like nobodies, right? Carol is the other survivors of the hive mind, the immune individuals, the other 12, they're nobodies. And Carol seems to be the only one so far. I haven't watched episode 3 yet, but the only one so far who had a fan base, who was widely known, who had won awards. So I think that would also affect the way that the hive mind sees Carol. More members of the hive mind knew about Carol and were fans of Carol and had their own emotions toward Carol. There's more of them than there are for the other members of the survivors. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the hive mind has a particular liking for Carol that is higher than the other members. Okay, I know I told you guys to pay attention. And yeah, when we read this last little part of chapter 16, the alarm bells probably went off in your head. They went off in my head as well. This last line here, let me just read it again. This is Lucasia, the main character, whom, for the purposes of this discussion, we're gonna assume that Lucasia is Carol and that Raban is Helen or Zosha, either or, we don't know yet. We're going to assume that Raban is Helen or Zosha. So Carol says, Helen or Zosha, is that really you? Her voice was hoarse with need. Beside Carol, some healer looked from one of them to the other with growing curiosity, but Helen/Zosha merely frowned. When her lover finally spoke, her words pierced Carol's battered heart. I'm sorry, madam. Have you mistaken me for someone you know? Oh boy, I did not like this when I read it. My stomach dropped. I think that's going to be the ending of Pluribus. The hive mind is undone, but Carol can never get Helen back because Helen legitimately died. Her memories are just gone when the hive mind ends. They're just gone. They're not going to be there anymore. In the case of Zosha, whatever relationship Carol, built up with Zosha over the course of Pluribus is also going to be disappeared if the hive mind comes to an end. Because if she regains her original consciousness, she's not going to know who Carol is anymore. Assuming that once you leave the hive mind, you lose all of your memories of when you were in the hive mind. So I think the way that this show will end is with Carol saving the world, yet she can't get Helen back, and she can't get Zosha back. So she's going to be the only member of the immune individuals who entered this Pluribus world with no body, and who leaves this Pluribus world with no body as well. And that's really, really sad. I don't want that to happen to you, Carol, but I think that's just the way things are going to play out here. Now, let's go back to the beginning. I made a little mental note here as we were reading the author's note. It's a bit meta, meaning the writers of Pluribus, or whoever was involved of writing this excerpt, was both speaking to the in-universe readers of Bloodsong of Wycaro, and they were also speaking to us in the real world at the same time. Now, the interesting part here is this. This is from the last paragraph. I am on record for despising spoilers in any form. That is my preference. Be to let events unfold in their own time through Carol's anguish eyes. But I also understand that that's not everyone's preference. So, and then they continue by saying, I say this with love. I'm honestly getting a bit exhausted with the cyclocane of emotions. Some people like to eat their dessert first, I guess. If you're one of them, the following sneak peek is for you. When she says this, Carol, when she says this, I think she's talking to us in the real world, that whatever we're about to read here actually exposes a lot. It's a spoiler for Pluribus, coded within hidden language within the chapter text that we probably won't understand right now, but it is a spoiler nonetheless. And the writers of Pluribus, who are speaking through Carol in this author's note, are telling us that the show is meant to be experienced without us spoiling ourselves, but they know that there are super fans in the world, and they've also given us something to look at here. And I just thought that was interesting. It made me feel when I read this little piece, that's what inspired me to make this video, because I felt like whatever was in chapter 16 is going to make a lot of sense later on as we watch more episodes. So I wanted to see with you all if we could catch anything or pull anything out or extract any narrative value from chapter 16, the Isle of Sinantes. There are only 3 images involved with this excerpt. We have the cover, then we have an image of Carol's signature in the Apple book itself, and then we have the picture of Carol that we see at the end. Lastly, before we go into the chapter text, there's also a little sentence here that says, "But if you're true purple, a Wycarian through and through, then hopefully you've already bought a copy of the book and are reading it front to back, the way Aurora intended it." Again, I interpret that as being a little, meta call out from the writers of this involved with Pluribus, that yes, theory crafting and speculating and looking for Easter eggs and trying to figure out where the story is going beforehand is fun, but the way that Pluribus is intended to be watched is through the TV show in chronological order at the time that it comes out. So don't get too, wrapped into all of this speculation here. What happens in the TV show is, of course, the source of truth and the official canon. All right, on to the chapter text. I'm doing this live, so like I said, no notes. I'll just scan the text and see if anything sticks out to me that I might want to have a discussion on, so there will be some silence. Right, so the chapter kind of starts off with Lucasia being sick, and it's a sickness that has taken over her entire crew on the ship, and it's really bad. However, she finds some sort of an ointment in her room, and she applies it to herself, which prevents her burning arm from being so painful, I guess. And she kind of applies this and reminisces about Raban, and the slide here ends on a sentence, "If only there were a salve for a broken heart." This reinforces my opinion that Pluribus is a show centrally about grief, love, and loss. I don't know if Raban represents Zosha, the pirate lady, or Helen, or if it is a mix of the two, or if it is none of them at all. But whatever sickness has come over the crew that prevents them from being able to stand outside and is making them very, very sick, which I think is a analogy for the pluribus hive mind. There is a salve that kind of eases it very briefly for a limited amount of time. So they're on their way to this island called Senantes because they heard of a mythical healer that is able to cure this sickness for all of them. Now, before we continue, I think that throughout the rest of Pluribus, I don't think that the 13 are going to be the 13 forever. I think that number is going to decrease. I think that the hive mind will find a way to absorb certain members of the pluribus. We already see in episode 2, some of them want to be a part of the hive mind, so they probably wouldn't even resist it. And I think that is what the sickness here in chapter 16 represents, that hive mind disease. As for this mythical healer on the island of Senantes, I have no idea who that could be or what that could relate to in the narrative of Pluribus. I'm only 2 episodes in, so there's not much to go on there on that front. Lucasia orders her crew to sail to this island against her co-captain's, disbelief. She orders them to sail, and it says here she climbed the steps and took her rightful place at the helm of the Mercator. Now, the Mercator projection is, that globe, the standard globe you usually see, the map of the world. It's a particular projection of the Earth onto a 2D surface. So this sentence here, she climbed her steps and took her rightful place at the helm of the Mercator. She's taking her place at the helm of the ship. But if we want to try and, extract some extra value from this sentence, we could say that Carol, who is Lucasia, is taking her steps and her position as the leader of humanity, the leader of the Mercator projection, the captain of the Earth during this Pluribus time. The next part of it says, it was only a few hours later until they spotted land. The master of the watch, who I believe is not sick like the majority of the crew. It says it's been a few hours since they spotted land, though for the crew, it had felt like days. Perhaps the people who are trapped in the hive mind, metaphorically the members of the crew who are sick and under the deck, experience time differently than those who are still conscious, still sentient, and still have free will. Maybe an hour for Carol feels like days for the individuals trapped in the Pluribus. Lucasia drew Raban's topcoat tighter around her. Despite her practical nature, Lucasia found herself secretly wishing it might somehow imbue her with his strength. Carol is also a very practical individual. She seems less swayed by the fantastical nature of what has happened to the world in Pluribus. She seems more grounded, more focused on achieving the goal of turning humanity back. But I think some of that hardness about her will relieve itself, I guess I would say, as Carol becomes closer to Zosha, aka the hive mind, trying to manipulate her. Yet, she will still maintain her singular goal of saving humanity. She won't be like Kumba or the other individuals who are having a fine and dandy time. So Lucasia, or Carol, finds the island. She jumps off the ship and begins a long trek to find this mysterious healer. It's a very difficult journey, and she eventually reaches the mouth of a cavern in which she collapses after finally realizing that she has found Madame Asclepius, the healer capable of curing the crew's sickness. The healer is able to heal Lucasia with some sort of an elixir that she pulls out of a vial on her neck. As soon as Lucasia or Carol drinks it, she is immediately healed and strengthened and stands up straight. However, the healer says, "Okay, bye." And Lucasia's like, "Wait, you don't understand. I need your help. A curse has befallen my ship. My crew lies paralyzed. In their hammocks, they are haunted by visions of death and destruction. We cannot venture into the light of the twin moons, lest our skin burn and boil. It is driving my men mad. We have already lost 4 lives." What? That is a very interesting piece of dialogue here. There's a lot, I just get this vibe that there's a lot packed into that. A curse has befallen my ship, or a curse, a virus has taken over humanity. The world lies paralyzed and possessed. They are haunted by visions of death and destruction. Could that be what the people inside of the Pluribus who have been taken control of by this hive mind are experiencing in their almost comatose-like state? Is that physical appearance of happiness just an appearance? Is the hive mind lying that everyone is happy? I don't know, but saying that they are haunted by visions of death and destruction is very concerning. I'm going to keep an eye out while I watch episode 3 later today to see if I can make something of this little section of dialogue here. We cannot venture into the light of the twin moons, lest our skin burn and boil. It is driving my men mad. We have already lost 4 lives. I think 4 of the survivors, 4 of the immune, will either die, whether they be killed by one another, or they will join the Pluribus. So after that, Lucasia begs the healer to heal the rest of her crew, and the healer reiterates that she already has a patient she's attending to who is more important than Carol and her crew, or Lucasia and her crew. Lucasia then pleads that she will give the healer whatever amount of money she wants, or she will take the healer wherever she wants to go on the Mercator once the crew is cured, that she will give this healer any place in the world of Wycaro to adventure. And then we find out that the healer is attending to Raban. Raban seems to be able to remember an item which he possessed, the coat, but he does not seem to be able to remember Lucasia. Now, we get a little section here about Lucasia being ecstatic and surprised. She feels like she's dreaming at the sight of Raban. But I think the most important part of this section is that last paragraph. Her cascading emotions coalesced into a single crystalline feeling, one she hadn't allowed herself these many months, one she thought she had learned to live without. Finally, her heart filled with hope. We know that Carol's emotions have a very strong effect on the Pluribus when she gets very angry and directs it at a member of the hive mind. The entire hive mind across the entire earth begins to tweak. They begin to shake, have a seizure, and if they're doing something dangerous or if they fall and hit their head, they're dead. The focusing on Lucasia's emotions coalescing into a single crystalline feeling makes me feel like there is a power within Carol to be harnessed, something for her to master in regards to her emotions that might be a key to some sort of special interaction with the Pluribus. And of course, like we talked about at the beginning, after all of this, after Lucasia travels across the seas, gets to the island of Sinantes, finds the healer, gets healed herself, begs for the healing of the rest of her crew. She finds Raban. She's excited to see him. She questions if it is really him. And Raban responds, "I'm sorry, madam. Have you mistaken me for someone you know?" Raban has no recollection of Lucasia at this point. Since the healer is working on him, that's just what makes me believe that when you leave this Pluribus, when you're healed metaphorically by this healer, you lose your memories from before. Unfortunately, Zosha, I don't think she will remember Carol when this is all over. Helen is not coming back. Her consciousness is just gone. When the thing is over, she's just gone. No one will preserve her memories after that point. So I think that is the tragedy at the end of Pluribus, that Carol is able to save the world and get everybody back, but she's not able to get back Helen, and she's not able to get back Zosha. Let me know what you guys think of this excerpt that Apple TV graciously gave us earlier this week. As we see in the author's note, it kind of hints at the fact that there's a lot of foreshadowing and potentially spoilers in this chapter for us here. So let me know, any of you guys who have a keener eye, who are more detailed and analytical, if you see anything particularly interesting that could relate to the future of Carol, of Zosha, of Helen, and the remaining survivors of Pluribus.